My only son informed me that nobody wanted to see my unsightly face at his wedding. If I showed up for the wedding, his fiancée threatened to put me in a nursing home. I was dying, yes, but I was also keeping a secret worth millions of dollars, and they had no idea. I even made them pose for the camera on the day they tried to delete me. Only once more before I retract my statements. Let me fill you in on the details. That day, I wore my lavender blouse, the one with the tiny pearl buttons he used to play with as a baby. Even my pearl earrings, which he gave me for Mother's Day when he was 12, were pinned on. I stared at myself in the mirror, trying to imagine what he'd see when he arrived. Trying not to look like a ghost, all I could see was an elderly woman wearing a scarf and obviously exhausted. Regardless, I grin. I naively thought that today would be one of those memorable events that we could all laugh about later. Perhaps I'd say something stupid and he'd make a funny face while Vanessa would smile. Maybe they'd ask me to help with napkin folding or sample the cake frosting. Even then, I was still his mother. This seemed significant to me. He walked in confident and smelling of cologne without knocking. I brewed tea from the loose leaves that James used to beg for when he was younger, and he paid no attention to the cookies I had set out. He sat casually on the edge of my couch as if he were already in a better place. I felt as if someone had thrown me off my feet, despite the fact that I was already standing when he spoke. In my opinion, skipping the wedding is the best option. He expressed it as if it were a favor. To save myself the trouble, I would thank him. The teacup that I had not yet touched rested on my palm. Part of me understood what he meant, but I still wanted to know, so I asked. He took a moment to adjust his collar and explained how meticulously the event was planned. Quite contemporary, streamlined design. Keep things simple. Vanessa and I have already agreed that this should be reflected on the guest list. I couldn't help but laugh because I was so surprised. Your mother won't be in your wedding photos? Really? In his chair, he moved about. Images are not the primary focus. Presentation is critical. It appears that you have been unwell. This scarf. The end. A hacking fit. It may make some of the visitors feel uneasy. A small crack appeared in my heart. I would thus act as a diversion, he said. Mom and I disliked how formal it sounded. Oh, our hearts ache for you. Come on. Vanessa has specific style preferences. A specific encounter. And he was unable to finish it. She also entered the building without knocking. Hello, Vanessa. A stunningly attractive tall figure reminiscent of a magazine cover. She avoided my gaze. She surveyed my living room as if she could smell something. She believes this is the location. Cozy, very retro. This is my mother, James told Vanessa. Without meeting my gaze, she gave a silent nod. It is a pleasure to meet you. I stood there feeling out of place in my own house. I softly replied that I wanted to be present. Back there I can sit. Pay no attention to me. All I want is for my son to get married. She then turned to me. And finally, her expression remained icy as she did so. The seating chart has been finalized. Furthermore, there is a dress code. I have no doubt that you understand. It's all about energy. I glanced at her while waiting for James to intervene. Nonetheless, he avoided doing so. Vanessa claims she is not feeling well. Yes, you are ill. Your efforts are commendable, but please avoid wearing a scarf with such pale skin. It's sure to irritate some people. James joined in as well. The photographs can be sent to you. We'll even include you in the ceremony through FaceTime. The experience will be immersive. I complained quietly about the FaceTime link. That room is where I want to be. Vanessa gave a cruel grin. It would be nice to talk after the honeymoon. Regarding healthcare for the elderly and vulnerable. A place that is peaceful and unspoiled. an ideal environment for healing. What does she mean by nursing home? I asked. James believes there is no need to complicate things any further. Respect is something I strive for. I looked at him intently, just like the eyes I kissed goodnight and the jawline I rocked to sleep on. What happened to that young lad? Whispering, I told you I had given you everything, all of my belongings. He rose to his feet and exhaled in a miserable sound. Thank you for that. You cannot, however, continue to guilt-trip me indefinitely. He said it, and that was it. Dad abandoned you for this exact reason. A part of me seemed to freeze. The way he said it was threatening. It was as if he had spent years preparing for that moment, and it landed exactly where he hoped. I stayed silent. I sat down gingerly on my knees. Without being touched, the tea remained warm, and the cookies too. Vanessa pivoted toward the entrance. We'll contact you soon. Please report back to us on the effectiveness of your treatments. As he kissed the top of my scarf, James lowered his head. It was like someone was caressing a gravestone. Mom, we adore you. I mean, it is true. Then they left, in an instant. No, I controlled my tears. I kept my voice low. Going to the window, I stood up and watched their car drive away. Thank you for revealing your true self to me, I murmured to the now empty room. I gently pulled the scarf taut around my neck. It was no longer a means of hiding shame. It kept me from falling apart. Since a change had occurred within me, I needed to get something done right now. He would also acquire knowledge, whatever the case might be. What happens when a mother who has sacrificed everything finds herself with nothing to lose? Except calmness. There is no ill will, nothing more than a clarification. Look up. That night I remained composed. I maintained my composure and did not yell, curse, or pray for answers. I sat quietly and did nothing. Surrounded by my worn-out flannel robe, which I've had since James was a freshman in high school. My slender hands were folded into my lap. The lights in the living room remained on. The house appeared darker, as if the shadows were paying attention. Chemo made my breath raspy and shallow. My concerns were unfounded. The only thing I did was stare out the window, watching the streetlights flicker across the empty street. Thinking back to when James would walk up my front steps in that exact light after a long day of school, a bouncing backpack, never satisfied, never stopped babbling. I'm now the only one. His words weighed heavily on me. If you do this, your photographs will be ruined. Simply put, you will put people on edge. Dad abandoned you for this exact reason. The most agonizing was the final one. Richard left because of his cowardice, not my actions. And I knew it. He was opposed to being a parent. I didn't feel like juggling two jobs. Refused to love a woman with visible signs of fatigue and stretch marks that resembled battle wounds. James was never informed about the truth. In my mind, his father was always exhausted, never missing. As shattered, not harsh. For some reason, I gave James the impression that Richard might have loved him once. I felt obligated to do so. James is now an adult, attractive, wealthy, and distant, and harsh, in the same vein as his father. Coming up from my chair, I took my time. I limped down the corridor, my legs frozen from the chemotherapy and the cold. As if to reassure me that no one else was home, the sound of my every step echoed throughout the mansion. The bed was made, my room was clean, and I discovered the Bible open on the nightstand exactly where I had left it earlier in the day. Down in the basement, there was an old filing cabinet, and I knelt with difficulty as I approached the closet. A folder containing black ink labels was hidden underneath birth certificates and years of tax returns. Final. I took it out, set it on the bed, and carefully opened it. The pages inside were neatly torn. Things like my last will and testament, life insurance policies, title documents for 3 rental properties, and bank records containing amounts that would surprise even me. Life has never been glamorous for me. I still have church shoes from 1997, clip my own toenails, and shop with coupons. To be sure, I have the means. Over the years, I quietly accumulated a fortune. My first real estate purchase still stands out in my mind. There is a dilapidated duplex next to it. After their elderly neighbor died, the family decided they didn't want to take on any additional responsibilities. I decided to make a bid using the small bequest my aunt had left for me. After gradually fixing it up and renting it out, I began to earn extra money each month. As a result, I went out to buy it again. Then another one. When my friend Diane needed help starting a beauty salon, I purchased a stake in the company. Everyone was quiet and unaware. Even James couldn't. His surprise was about to be mine. It was meant to be that way. My thoughts turned to the day I would attend the solemn and dignified funeral and Sylvia presenting the letter to James. The phrase, "You always thought I had nothing," would be printed inside. Rest assured, however, that I have kept this special for you. My hope for your future was something you needed to hear. Forget about that day ever arriving. As I lifted the will, my attention was drawn to the signature at the bottom. Massey, Eleanor Marie. James's name is visible above it. My sole offspring, I am the only inheritor. My letter opener was retrieved from the drawer on my nightstand that I had opened. James had given me a beautiful golden one while he was in college. My initials were on the bottom, written in small cursive. My use of it tore the will in 2. Quarters following that. Next in 8ths. That was a relief, as if the room's air pressure had suddenly risen. My first call the next morning was to my lawyer and oldest church friend, Sylvia Chambers. When we were 19, we were choir mates and thought life would be easier than it was. We have kept in touch since then. Sylvia picked up the phone on the second ring. When she spoke to Lorraine, her voice was still heavy with sleep. "How are you doing?" "No," I replied, "except I will. Will you be available this afternoon to drop by?" "My will requires revision." Then there was silence. "Is this referring to James?" Sylvia inquired. "I saw him yesterday." Thus, I reasoned, I came across the wedding invitations. You weren't mentioned. "Do not come," he begged. "Claim I'd destroy the aesthetic." Sylvia stayed silent. "And Vanessa," I added, my tone becoming more rigid. "I was a liability," she told me. "That a home should be assigned to me." James did nothing except stand. Void once more. "When I asked for updated paperwork, you mentioned it. I've already decided to leave it to someone else. Could you please confirm this for me, Sylvia? I am about to die." "That is not at this moment. I'm just reclaiming what is rightfully mine today." Sylvia sighed. "Count on me to bring everything." I went into the kitchen after hanging up the phone. I made tea, toasted some bread, and sat down at the table with a yellow legal pad. I prepared a new letter to the new beneficiary, not James, the Rose House Charitable Trust. Elderly women who have been abandoned by their families are cared for at a shelter in South Carolina. I volunteered there when I was younger, assisted with painting walls, serving meals, and even reading the Bible to residents who were too tired to do it themselves. Test my mettle right now. Nobody ever sees these girls. Ladies who have faded from memory. They prefer to keep women at arm's length so that they do not block their view. After finishing my toast, I set out to write the final set of instructions. The house would descend into the basement. We'd sell the rental homes and donate the proceeds. Using Diane's name would keep the salon open. Within 30 days of my death, the funds would be transferred from the accounts. No wake. There was no picture in the obituary. A single signed and printed letter. "Approach James Massey. I expected more from you as a child. I loved you with all of my heart. You dumped me for a woman who avoided making eye contact the entire time. As a result, you will receive 0. Whoever buried me alive has no right to bury my wealth alongside me. Just leave it." I put down the pen and returned my gaze to the window. Suddenly, the streetlight went out. The rising sun penetrated the cloud cover. A completely new day. An additional set of instructions. Something new at the end. I was planning to write it this time. Look up. The talkative PT may fumble a little. Confirm critical details. Sylvia Chambers arrived shortly after noon, carrying a black briefcase and 2 folders. She stayed silent. She was wiser. It was terrible that I was treated as a customer. We've been friends since we were young ladies, sneaking snacks during Easter rehearsals while dressed in pressed choir robes. We endured the years together, shared secrets, and wept at each other's funerals. Durable, aged, and immovable. Sylvia was silent as I slowly unlocked the door, my scarf draped like a crown. The woman simply entered the room and placed the briefcase on the dining table. "I made tea," I said. "However, the weather is currently chilly." She claimed it didn't matter. It's time to go to work. I took a seat at the table and pulled out the legal pad on which I had begun jotting down instructions the night before. The message was clear, despite my shaky handwriting and the occasional pen trailing off due to a lack of strength. I handed the document to Sylvia, who read it carefully. She then gathered a fresh set of papers, started drafting a new will from scratch, and began writing. I watched her for a long time before finally asking, "Did I ever explain to you why I started saving money?" Sylvia remained unaware. "You mentioned that you wanted to ensure that James would never go hungry." I mentioned it as a component. That was not all, however. Too many women died broke, and I witnessed it. Athletes who invest the same amount of time and effort as me. Women who sacrificed their lives for their ungrateful husbands' children were given low-paying jobs. No way was I going out like that, I promised myself. Sylvia, who jotted down some notes on a form, says, "You won't. You are making a lot of noise." So did I. His surprise was about to be mine. Do not touch anything, including the letters. There was a shoebox full of them. I had written one for each of his birthdays until his 50th. Sylvia took a brief pause. "So, what are your plans for them now?" I threatened to burn them. He no longer remembers them. I do not understand him. For the next hour, we labored quietly. Along with the title of the salon that Diane Turner and I co-owned, I provided account numbers, property addresses, the name of my Citizens Trust banker, and other information. As a backup, I kept $10,000 in emergency bills, labeled and wrapped in an envelope in my sewing drawer. Sylvia listed all of her valuable possessions, including each dollar and asset. I named the Rose House Foundation as the sole beneficiary at the top of my new will. I raised an eyebrow at Sylvia. "Do you really want to hand over everything to them? Nobody has ever asked me to disguise my identity. They are unconcerned about my appearance. We elderly people are not treated as if we were pieces of furniture that someone forgot to move." "Do you truly not want James to inherit anything?" Sylvia politely inquired. I fixed my gaze outside the window. Even with the curtains drawn, light could enter. I've always kept my distance from him. I am satisfied. Sylvia continued with a subtle nod. By the end of the session, my trembling hand showed the strain of signing. After Sylvia had placed the will on the table in front of me, I began writing. Although it lacked the grace of my previous signature, it was still final and my own. I wrote a letter as well. After the final document was signed, I gave my statement. With him, this is to clarify the reason for it. "Would you like me to hand it to him?" "Not yet," I responded. "Allow him to tie the knot. He should be able to flaunt his new bride while wearing a tuxedo. assume victory for him. She gave me a sideways look. After that, the next step is to give him the envelope, clearly visible to everyone. Lorraine, do you intend to cause a commotion? It will not be a scene. I'm wrapping up one. He started it. The same day he told me I was ugly. Sylvia gave a grave nod. We sat side by side for a little longer, carefully placing the legal papers back into the briefcase. The table is covered by a sealed envelope. Once again, my breathing was shallow. The light from the kitchen lights made my skin appear pale, almost translucent. Nonetheless, I rekindled a long dormant spark. "You think I'm being unkind?" A question slipped out of my mouth as I whispered it. Sylvia reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. "No, I believe you are telling the truth. Also, I believe he is fortunate that you did not fare worse." Giggles ensued. "Stay away from me." We performed a happy dance, a nostalgic melody reminiscent of Sunday dinners in choir robes, as if my lungs could still contain joy. There was something heavier beneath it, however, something long-lasting. What a woman who had lost everything had to say in a moment of truth. As Sylvia stood up to leave, I handed her the manila envelope with James' name on it. I told them to hold on to it. "Make a solemn vow to me." "Then what is it?" "Do not let him weep and cause you to reconsider." "I told you to give it to him at the exact moment." Nodding, Sylvia agreed. "I reassure you." Keeping one hand on the wall for stability, I walked her to the door at a slower pace. After locking the door behind her, I watched her drive away. A hush fell over the house, far too quiet. I went back to my bedroom, turned off the lights, and discovered a shoebox full of birthday letters under my bed. I took each letter to the kitchen and threw it in the trash can after tearing it in half. Then they disappeared. That one was for his 30th birthday. He plans to marry in the future. "Remember that you were always my son" before anything else was the song's opening line. Gone. When I finished, my hands smelled like ash ink, but my heart was cleansed. I walked cautiously to the sink and lathered my hands while staring at my reflection in the glass. I was still wearing my scarf as a head covering. My skin felt exhausted. My skeletons were hidden beneath my robe. My eyes, however, were vibrant. But I assured myself that I was not finished yet. My name will be known all over the world once I finish. The invitation was enclosed in a substantial cream-colored envelope with gold lettering and embossed trim. 4 days before the wedding, I found it in my mailbox, tucked between a coupon catalog and a letter from my oncologist. I knew it wasn't from James. The return address went to someone else entirely. Carla, a cousin from Colombia, was the type of relative who arrived at any family gathering with a platter of dessert and a few whispered rumors. I carefully opened the envelope while standing on my porch. The medications are making my fingers tremble slightly. The inside featured a glossy photo of James and Vanessa, as well as a folded card with cursive calligraphy. He wore a tuxedo and casually wrapped his arm around her waist as they stood beneath a white archway. She wore a long, fitted gown. Their smiles were broad and flawless. I stared at the photo for what seemed like an eternity, trying to read their expression. Nothing came up. I held the card in my hand and examined it. The outdoor ceremony, now held in a vineyard on Charleston's outskirts, was decorated with white roses and meticulously styled. The message, written in small font, was tucked beneath the address. "Come celebrate this special occasion with us. We would be honored if you could be here." Naturally. Silence. Respect the couple's wishes by sitting in the designated family section. We all adore Carla. Giggles ensued. Naturally. I thought it would be a nice gesture if James agreed to send the invitation. A sliver of blame was thrown around. Alternatively, perhaps Vanessa had the entire idea. She managed to appear gracious without saying a single word of apology. It did not matter. The point had been made. I was allowed to go. Given that I kept my invisibility, I carefully unfolded the card and set it on the kitchen counter. I barely needed to pause for thought. Sure, I would go. They're not interested in it. Under my own name. I got up early on the wedding day. A hush fell over the house. There is still no sign of the sun peeking over the horizon. My hands lingered over my skin as I bathed methodically, as if I was trying to recall my remaining strength. I wore the same gentle gray suit to church as I did on Easter Sunday, and I wrapped a deep blue scarf with silver stitching around my head. My mother gave me a brooch for graduation, which I fastened with a pin. Despite its age, the tiny silver dove has retained its luster. The sight of myself in the mirror brought me to a halt. My frame seemed thinner and more delicate than I remembered. However, I kept a clear gaze. I'm still the same. Plus, I had some errands to run today. Sylvia arrived on time, dressed in a navy pantsuit and low heels. She presented the manila envelope sealed and bearing James' name from her briefcase. I gave her a small black bag containing tissues, a water bottle, and another envelope. I meant to say that that one was for Vanessa, then hand it to her. Sylvia's eyes met mine. Do you truly believe you can handle this? I nodded and gave the signal. Please see it for me. This happens only once. He needs to tell me how far he feels he has progressed. We continued our quiet ride, the car making a low hum as we approached the vineyard. The estate was breathtaking. Verdant vines grow in rows across the hills. Under the twinkling lights of the white tents, guests in pastel and champagne-colored dresses mingle. A small quartet of musicians played gentle jazz near the front entrance. For a while, I just sat in the car, taking everything in. He didn't skimp on anything, Sylvia said quietly. I mumbled something in response, refusing to hand over my money. We left the building together, with Sylvia directing me to my assigned seats while I regained my footing. No one recognized me, but a few guests gave us sidelong glances and courteous nods. No one realized that the woman dressed in a delicate gray suit and scarf was the one who made this wedding possible. As you requested, I sat quietly in the third row. As I sat, I had a clear view of the altar, the congregation, and the small platform where the newlyweds would exchange vows. While I was waiting, I drank from my water bottle. Shortly after the ritual began, James moved confidently down the aisle. Vanessa trailed behind, looking stunning in a figure-hugging gown that glistened in the sun. They all gasped in awe. Not me. All I could do was stare at James. He turned away from me. The ceremony began with the officiant saying a few words about the value of family trust and remembering those who helped you grow up. I kept a close eye on James. When they mentioned parents, he shifted slightly but did not turn around. Devotions were lengthy. When Vanessa finished hers, she sobbed. James grinned, displaying his signature charisma and amiability. They turned to face the audience as husband and wife after exchanging rings and gently kissing. Loud cheers erupted. News cameras swiveled. The crowd stood up. I kept my seat. Sylvia stooped down. "Right now," I muttered. "I'm still not ready." The happy couple walked down the aisle together while their friends and family took pictures and laughed. As Vanessa planted a kiss on James' cheek, he gently drew her closer. I sat motionless, hands on my lap, breathing shallowly and slowly. Tents for the reception were erected. People began making their way there. I gave Sylvia a quick glance and nodded. Sylvia stood up, took the envelope out of her bag, and approached the couple posing beneath the floral arch. Vanessa, perplexed, scowled when she noticed her approach. As soon as James saw her, his smile faded. Sylvia graciously extended her congratulations. "This was sent to you, straight from your mother." She handed James one envelope and then turned to give Vanessa the other. Sylvia stepped aside and returned to my side before either of us could speak. She quietly declared, "It's done." Gradually, I stood up, firmly gripping the cane handle. James opened the envelope while standing across the field. His face changed in an instant. Confusion, unbelief follows, distress ensued. He thumbed through the contents. "This is the current will along with the letter and donation receipt." He looked up and blinked. Our eyes met across the vineyard. A wave eluded me. A grin eluded me. After a moment, I redirected my steps towards the car. He can smile for the camera. One day, he should have this. I'd own everything that came after it. Section 5 of First-Person View. Keep everything the same except for changing to first-person view. Look up. The talkative PT may fumble a little. Confirm critical details. The manila envelope trembled in James' hands as he stood still. The audience around him continued to applaud, laugh, and toast. The photographer shifted his lens for the following series of photographs. However, James remained motionless. Under his warm brown skin, his face had paled. He felt the pulsation of his temple veins. His mouth was slightly agape, as if the printed words had sucked the breath from him. Vanessa peered over his shoulder, growing increasingly impatient. Describe it. Why did she return? My God, what on earth is this? After receiving 2 envelopes from Sylvia, she grabbed the second and ripped it open. On the ivory stationery, I had written a single note by hand. "Listen up, Vanessa. I will not allow this to escalate into an insult. The memory of you staring at me and threatening to throw me away like yesterday's garbage is too painful to bear. Still, I have to share this with you. If you expect to marry James, get a new dress and start over. At the moment, he has nothing. He deserved it. Massey Lorraine." Vanessa was taken aback. "Excuse me, but what exactly does that mean?" James stayed silent. He flipped through the legal documents Sylvia had included. Documents containing well-organized text that have been signed and stamped. A clear will was left. I left everything to the Rose House Foundation, including my homes, bank accounts, and beauty parlor shares. He wasn't satisfied, never spent a dime. There is no endowment. I am feeling homesick, including the pearls he gave me when I was younger. The final page consisted of a personal letter. "James Love gave birth to you. Your upbringing was centered on giving. To give you a chance at a future, I scrubbed hospital floors. My shoe soles eventually came off. I denied myself necessities so you could say yes to everything you wanted. Even though I was sick, I wanted to leave everything to you. Regardless, you hadn't communicated in weeks. Regardless, you have never joined me for a treatment session. It was still my intention for you to benefit from my work. Then, you dropped your jaw and said I couldn't go to your wedding because I was too unattractive. At that point, I realized that my role as a mother was successful. My son, you failed. My only bequest to you is the name you were given. I hope you'll use it to make something. Just leave it." He picked it up once. Next time, every time the shaking in his hands worsened. A crack appeared in the grin he had worn as a mask of perfection. A silence fell over the audience. The musicians stopped performing. Somebody wanted to know what was going on. Her voice trembled with fear as Vanessa turned to face him. "Have you seen this? Please make it stop being real. Are you serious, James?" He turned to her, his face pale. Her bequest to me had no monetary value. His expression on Vanessa's face indicated that he had just informed her of his bankruptcy. She began speaking. Later, it was sealed, opened once more. "What has she given up? I overheard you say she was dying. I overheard what you said." He quickly realized she was about to die. "Very much so," Vanessa hissed. "I see. So why were you hesitant? You gave her free rein because you couldn't maintain a polite demeanor for 3 hours? He stayed silent. Vanessa's gaze darted around the venue. There were too many people watching. All phones were down. Claws were developing into pointed digits. He moved a step away from him. No way am I marrying a destitute man who has no control over his mother. Those words felt like a slap in the face. James reached out and took her hand. Vanessa, I begged you. Nothing in this affects who we are. Yes, we can. She removed her hand and withdrew. You made me ashamed. You let her make fun of me. I wasn't aware of her. She sat there. Vanessa yelled out, pointing with an arrow to the third row. You invited her to the wedding. There was complete silence among the guests. At that point, the reception tent froze. James slowly shifted his gaze to where I had been sitting. I disappeared. Only a folded scarf remained on the chair. Azure with silvery strands. With care, leaving on purpose, Vanessa abruptly pivoted and stomped away. An arranged bouquet was left on the lawn. Her bridesmaids hurriedly followed her, clicking their heels and whispering in smoke. James stood alone in front of the floral arch after they had exchanged their vows. The photographer lowered his camera, whispering softly. James was approached by one of the visitors, a long-lost cousin of mine who reached out and touched his shoulder. Gentlemen, that woman went through hell and back to raise you, he whispered to his son. The front row would have been better suited for her. Even James froze. With the envelope in one hand and his wedding ring in the other, he remained still. Sylvia stood by, observing from a distance. After I got home, I drank tea by the window. I knew what had happened even before I saw it. Hearing it was unnecessary. I could feel it. I had anticipated this moment. It has arrived. Remain silent. Absolutely correct. Hold on. This is for every mother who was told she wasn't enough, I said quietly to myself as I watched the streetlight across the street turn on. My eyes welled up with tears, but this time they were not of sadness. They were peacemakers. The funny thing about beating cancer is that no one expects you to do so quietly. They wait in the hall for the victorious speech, the survivor's picture, and the doctor's glossy grin. I tried not to cry when my oncologist called to tell me that the treatment had been successful and that the scans had come back clear. I kept my mouth closed. The news felt like a note that I needed to read, so I simply looked out the window, said good, and stuffed it all inside. I was prepared to die. I had accepted that fact. However, things have improved since then, living in tranquility. James was not informed. He had no business being informed. Let him believe I passed. I did. Please have the attorney follow my directions. Give the obituary its runtime. The silence will speak volumes. Despite everyone's sadness for me, I was still alive. Not long after the ceremony, I left Charleston. At a distance. Avoid saying goodbye. A journey free of regret. Sylvia's kitchen counter had only my passport, a leather purse, and a single letter that read, "It's done" on it. I appreciate it. I currently live in a seaside town in southern Spain. The scent of oranges and sea salt pervades the air. No one in my neighborhood knows who I am. I prefer to be called Allie. I grow my own mint and basil in the old courtyard of my little blue-shuttered home. In the afternoons, I sit with a wool blanket wrapped around my knees and a mug of tea. I have a little cash on hand,